on Nation to Nation, Doug Ford wants to develop an area in Northern Ontario known as the Ring of Fire, but Neskantaga Chief Chris Muniz says not so fast.
There hasn't been any consultation nor accommodation to the Neskantaga people.
Jordan Bennett-Biguet of ICT News was at Donald Trump's inauguration, and she tells us what Native Americans had to say.
Why they voted for him, right? They wanted a better economy. They wanted to get a handle on inflation.
Saskatoon Star Phoenix columnist Doug Cuthan says Justin Trudeau is by far the best Prime Minister First Nations people ever had.
First of all, having a nation-to-nation relationship with First Nations took us to a different level, and he began to recognize us as legitimate political bodies.
Welcome to Nation. I'm Fraser Needham. This week, the federal government and 15 First Nations in Northern Ontario released the terms of reference for an environmental assessment in an area northeast of Thunder Bay known as the Ring of Fire. It contains valuable minerals used in the production of stainless steel as one example. The Ontario government is keen to mine the area, but First Nations have expressed concerns. Neskantaga is one of the affected First Nations, and joining me today to talk about it all is the community's Chief Chris Muniz. Welcome to Nation, Chief Muniz.
Thank you.
So first of all, I guess that this is an area that a lot of obviously the Ontario government has an interest in because of these critical minerals that are up there. And sort of the federal government released this terms of reference. This week? What does that change maybe, or what's the latest? I guess the way you see things for this area.
For Neskantaga, it doesn't really change anything in terms of giving their free, prior, informed consent, and just because we agreed to look at those terms of reference doesn't mean that we're given our consent to have development in our territory. It's just a step in a direction where the community can ask questions if we're allowed. As of right now, there hasn't been any consultation nor accommodation to the Neskantaga people. And, we have questions like, what are the real benefits of allowing development in our area? And what are the real impacts? There's social impacts, there's environmental impacts, what's going to happen to our river. It surely will impact our treaty rights and our title to the land. Those are questions that needs to be asked and answered, and maybe as part of the regional assessment, some of those questions will be answered.
Now, we kind of mentioned in the lead up, of course, I don't think anybody in the communities is against having a road into these and the infrastructure that would come along with it, but it has been this issue of free, prior and informed consent by the Ontario government. Now, they've faced some criticism in the past that they really have done press releases and that not including the First Nations in the area. Has there been any improvement on that in recent months, or is it still sort of business as usual the way the Ontario government's doing things?
Well, it's been business as usual, but the problem is that they continue to make threats, to our land. Having the hopping on the bulldozer and coming to our homelands or territories, or whatever terminology you prefer, but it's home to our First Nation people, the Neskantaga people, and we're not against the communities having roads. And I certainly would like to have a road too, but the thing is, it's always contingent upon development, and that's something that we need to have further discussion on.
Now, as you've been following, I'm sure in the news, Premier Ford has stepped in as kind of, he's kind of the lead right now, I guess, with the premiers, in terms of these tariff threats, the Trump tariff threats. And of course, Canada as an energy leader vis-a-vis the States, right? And so this is putting a whole nother pressure. Do you see that being a pressure too on some of the communities up there also, that the Ontario government may sort of say, we need to even move faster on this now to kind of position ourselves to what Trump's doing?
Well, that's the that's the reason why Ford made that announcement. I would think anyway, to have nighttime. For him to drive the bulldozer during the day and get another chief to drive at night. I mean, regardless, if the if Neskantaga First Nation doesn't consent, then they'll be there to block whoever's driving.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, of course, is always with these things, it's supposed to be jobs related to it. But has anyone laid out or studied or given you any indication if it were to go ahead, what would be the benefits in terms of economic development, specifically for the First Nations and also for jobs for First Nations people in the area?
Well, for our First Nation, you don't really have to negotiate for jobs. Jobs are given. You don't negotiate your land for jobs, but what about the services? Like I've been under a boil. Neskantaga has been under a boil of water advisory for 10,949 days. That's 29 years already, and it's going to be 30 years February 1, 1995, and February 1 this year. It's going to be 30 years. We've been under boil of water advisory since February 1, 1995. How come we don't have clean drinking water? Include even for our high school students. Our children leave at the age of 13, 14 years old to go to high school, and some of them never come back because they have to pursue post-secondary and things like hospitals. How come we don't have a hospital? Or even elders' care homes. We elders are sent out to places like Thunder Bay, Soloca, and they go die there. They die of loneliness when they get out there. So how come we don't have a hospital? Those are things that matter to Neskantaga people. Those are just small examples that matter to Neskantaga people. That they extract resources out of our territories, but we don't have those services. What if we have those services? Maybe we'll have a different position.
Yeah, obviously lots of issues to talk about, and then always with these projects, it's sort of people get caught up with the, whether it's the electric car market or that, but it's always for the local communities. What are the benefits? And I'm sure those are the questions that you get asked. But unfortunately, I'll have to end it there. But thanks very much for joining us today.
All right. Okay. I got you.
Up next, we'll talk to Jordan Bennett-Piguet of ICT News about Donald Trump's inauguration speech and how it is playing out with Native Americans. Welcome back. It was a big week in Washington, D.C. with the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. This is Trump's second go-around in the White House, and as is his nature, he's been saying many things, often controversial, about what he plans to do. But where Native American people fit into the Trump agenda remains to be seen. Joining me today is Jordan Bennett-Piguet, who's a managing editor with ICT News and was at Monday's inauguration. She joins me from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Nation to Nation.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So as we discussed a little bit beforehand, you were outside for the inaugural address. What was the atmosphere like out there?
Everything was cold, it was wet, it was snowing the day before. And when everyone was looking at the temperatures, he was the one who decided to move it inside the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. And so once that happened, chaos ensued, not just, for press, but also for thousands of people who came to Washington, D.C. to witness the swearing in. Because the rotunda can only fit about 600 to 700 people. And the National Mall counted, or at least the inaugural committee counted about a little over 200,000 viewers or people who are going to be there in person. and trying to fit 200,000+ people into the Capital One Arena, the NDC, which is the arena where it moved inside for the public viewing, that can only fit 20,000 people. So we were all very curious how they're going to fit that many people inside. Was it first come, first serve? Were tickets going to be acknowledged? Who had tickets? It was a lot of chaos, but in the end, people stayed in line. The line to get in for the public viewing of the ceremony went around blocks. There's, the security expanded. Essentially, my political correspondent and I, Polly DeNetclaw, we were just looking around looking for Native people, or in a sense, looking for somebody who had, earrings or regalia, or I don't know, some type of look. She got really lucky and we ran into a couple of folks who were waiting in line and wanted to go in. But it was definitely people were excited. A lot of folks are wearing, their merch. There's a lot of vendors out, people buying merch from them. So it was definitely a different environment. It felt much like a rally. And there was also a rally Sunday before too.
Right, so I'm going to ask you about that. What I know that you and your colleagues were talking to, trying to find as many Native American people as you could. What were sort of the things? What were they telling you?
They were telling telling Polly why they voted for him, right? They wanted a better economy. They wanted to get a handle on inflation. A lot of it surrounded, the same things that what Polly was saying, what she heard at the DNC, like what people wanted for their communities. So a lot of them were on the same page, but I think the approach for both sides looked a little bit different. And so that was like kind of the surprising part of a lot of us when she talked to them.
Yeah, so maybe just to clarify, obviously, as has hit our country too, inflation has been a big issue. Housing, people are feeling the struggling in the economy. I think that kind of dominated or what Trump tapped into. But in the actual speech, and he has said very conflicting from what I can see things about Native American people. And the speech itself, I'm sure you listened to it, and it doesn't say anything about Native Americans at all. In fact, it actually talks about manifest destiny, clearing the way, a lot of stuff that is not inclusive of Native American people. So what is that playing out a bit, or what's your thoughts as a reporter down there about that?
Oh, it's only a few days in, and I think a lot of journalists Native journalists down here are pretty busy. It's funny you bring up the inaugural address, because I know in the address he talked about renaming Mount Denali up in Alaska to Mount McKinley, to acknowledge William McKinley. Mount Denali was just named, I believe, like it was under Obama, in 2015 or 2016. And that was given to the mountain in Alaska by the Keweenaw Athabascan people. And so him wanting to rename it, and I could see on my social media feed, or people like, nope, it's gonna still be Mount Denali to me. But I mean, in this last few days, it's been a lot. He's been wanting to sign off a lot of executive orders, a lot of like education initiatives, a lot of DEI or diversity, equality, and initiatives. What else? He's just been, and it's affecting a lot of Native people from what I'm seeing on social media, like those who are in research, their grants are being halted or their research is being stopped. And those who are like at colleges also who have these federal grants, they're being stopped or paused. And so people are like wondering what's happening right now. And I know even a Navajo engineer at NASA, I just saw his post this morning, and I had to jump on here. I didn't get to read it, but his work is also being affected, their DEI programs there at NASA. And so it's definitely affecting a lot of people who are, Indigenous or even like non-Native and close, and people are wondering what's going to happen, and just it's kind of like in a standstill right now.
Okay, and running a little short on time here, but I want to, of course, ask you about President Biden now in his final hours did grant clemency to Leonard Peltier. I believe you wrote a story about it. How's that playing out with the Native American population?
Oh, that was a really, we were very surprised. I think it was probably the last 20 to 30 minutes that Biden announced and granted clemency to Leonard Peltier. He's been in prison for almost 50 years now, and he's about 80 years old. He's supposed to be released in several weeks, so we were going to cover it. A lot of people celebrated. We're really excited because they've been working and asking each administration over the years to grant him clemency. And there's also this other side of the conversation where, that people are, I guess, like not satisfied or kind of displeasured at of him being granted clemency, because they don't know the involvement of him, of the murder with an Indigenous woman too. So, and that's like another conversation.
Good. Well, so much we could talk about. The time goes by so quickly here, but I really appreciate you joining us, and keep up the good work down there that you're doing, and we do follow it. And hopefully you can join us again at some point.
Yeah, hopefully we do. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Up next, we'll talk to longtime Saskatoon Star Phoenix columnist Doug Cuthan about Justin Trudeau's time as Prime Minister and how it has affected Indigenous people in Western Canada. Welcome back. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was forced out by his own party earlier this month and will step down once a new Liberal leader is in place at the end of March. How history will judge the embattled Prime Minister's legacy remains to be seen, but one First Nations columnist says Trudeau has been the best Prime Minister for Indigenous people, hands down. Doug Cuthan writes for the Saskatoon Star Phoenix, and he joins me today. Welcome back to Nation to Nation, Doug, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you, too.
So I guess the first thing that I was going to ask you about, of course, is, the Prime Minister obviously has been embattled in recent weeks, but you seem to be saying in your column it's really important to remember some of the things that he did do for Indigenous people.
Yes, I think that, first of all, having a nation-to-nation relationship with First Nations took us to a different level, and he began to recognize us as legitimate political bodies. I think that took our people a long ways. We also brought a lot of budgets in line that had been frozen by the Harper government. So we started to see more money rolling into education and social programming and stuff like that. So, I agree that he might have made a few mistakes and everything. I'm not going to say he didn't. But the interesting thing is I like to, you like to shake the boil, stir the pot a little bit. And there's a great opposition to him out here in the West. So when I say something like he was the best Prime Minister he ever had, I got a flood of mail. So that's sort of, that's the fun of being a columnist. You can poke away at these hornets' nests and run away and live to fight another day.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you got some reaction to that because, of course, he's been always quite unpopular in the West. But I guess one thing that I wanted to ask you about is there has been, his questions about his seriousness towards some of these issues, the way and his legit, like sort of how genuine he's been. I have to go to the, treatment of Jody Wilson-Raybould. What was it, a few years ago, on the first day of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, he was off in Tofino windsurfing, I think. And there was one event you'll remember probably quite well at that closed-door meeting with Bobby Cameron, where he's kind of chastising him for not sort of organizing the First Nations when it's really the Cameron works for the First Nations, right, as you know. So what do you think he was genuine, I guess, or some people have questioned whether it was all kind of just a political act?
Yeah, in some ways he was, he delivered on a number of things, but also he had kind of a short fuse, and he tended to, like when he got after Bobby Cameron there, he was mad or upset because some of the chiefs showed up late and they wanted to stay longer than their allotted time and this sort of thing. Well, Bobby Cameron has no say over that. These are chiefs, these are elected leaders, and they had every right to just take up more time. It's just that Trudeau had to learn a lesson that when you're dealing with our leaders, you have to, make some allowances for this because we have a lot of very serious issues, and we just can't reduce these meetings to photo ops and stuff like that.
Now, I want to draw sort of if you read the polls, of course, it looks likely, we don't know, there's Liberal leadership going on there, but there will be a change of government, and the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre will, he'll be Prime Minister. There has been a number of initiatives, obviously, started by Trudeau. How do you think some of these would fare under a Conservative government?
Yeah, we're quite concerned about some of the land claims and other specific claims that are being settled right now. This under Trudeau, they've been fairly generous settlements and fairly speedy. Under the Conservative government, we know we've had a difficult time with some of these, and they drag their feet. Having said that, though, when Bill McKnight was Minister of Indian Affairs, he began the process of treaty land entitlement here in Saskatchewan, which has basically changed the economic landscape for us anyway. So, there's things that could be done, things that might be done, but I really, Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a very good track record with us. These comments he's made and some of his actions, he's really put us at a lower level. I heard, I think it was David Frum was complaining that the First Nations budget was bigger than the amount for national defense. And that concerns me because I can see the pressure will be on to increase national defense, and the pressure will be on to look for places to cut. And so I expect that our budgets will be cut or frozen under a Conservative government.
Now, in another, I think your latest column, actually, you talk about the Trump tariff threats and the need for Canadian unity, and of course this includes Indigenous people. Did you want to say why you think that's so essential?
Well, I think it is. Just to get back to Trudeau a little bit, he met with the national leaders, and his advice to them was go talk to your people on the other side of the border. That's kind of busy work, go away and leave us alone because we're important. And I didn't like that kind of attitude because our people have got much more to offer than just lobbying another minority on the other side of the border. For example, Chief Stuart Phillip in BC has said he's going to reevaluate their opposition to the Gateway Pipeline. Now that's a major decision on his part, and it's a major shift. But under the treaties, we agreed to share this country, and that meant both the bad and the good. And so now our leaders have to stand up and say, okay, we have things to offer too. There's a talk out here of a Western Canada pipeline that would go across to Hudson Bay. And that would have a great deal of First Nations and Métis input to make it work. So we hold the key to a lot of answers here. And I think our leaders have to be shown that we have to recognize that our leaders have got a lot of skill and a lot of experience, because our leaders have had some of the toughest jobs of any political leader in this country, just in dealing with the day-to-day tragedies of our people and the building a new nation and this type of thing. And in many ways, we're way ahead of provincial and federal leaders in some of our thinking. So I think that just to say, go talk to your counterparts across the border really isn't the answer. I think they have to stop and recognize our people and the abilities we have.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we'll have to end it there. But as always, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Fraser.
If you missed any part of tonight's show, you can check out our podcast at aptnnews.ca/podcast. I'm Fraser Needham. Good night.